Disruptive Dialogue with Thomas Cotton fosters conversations from incredible people and organizations where we hope to bring different perspectives that will help innovate change in our communities, cities, and nation. Hello, welcome to the Disruptive Dialogue. My name is Thomas Cotton, and I'm your host. I'm also the founder and CEO of Redemption and Advancement Alliance. Today, I have with me Brian Stafford. Brian was born in Bakersfield, California, the third child of six, and he went to school in between Denver, Colorado, and Bakersfield, California, as he was growing up in a low-income, single-parent home. He usually took care of his responsibilities when he was a kid, but at the age of 14, he was tired of seeing his mom struggle and ended up starting selling drugs. At the age of 17, he went to the Army and spent 2 years there. When he came home, within 6 months, his whole life would flip around. He was in Santa Barbara, California, committed a murder, and he served 32 years in the California Department of Corrections. However, he's been home now for the last 2 years, and since then, he's become a drug and alcohol counselor, a case manager, and a street ambassador. In 2024, he's looking at opening up his own nonprofit organization to cover some of the gaps that he's learned from the other organizations. So let us welcome Brian Stafford to the show. Hey, Brian.
How's it going?
Good, good, man. Thanks for being on with us. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, you and I have some intersecting history together, and we'll get to that later on. But I want to talk to you today, about brokenness. This season's about mending brokenness, and we covered the book Mending Brokenness, and now we're coming through some of the things that we're looking at. When I started this season, I was thinking of ways that we can talk about the things that we've been through in life, and brokenness really is one of those things that really covers a lot. So I want to know from you, in your past, what did brokenness look like?
Well, let me say this first. I think this is only fitting considering this is Black History Month
Yeah,
because if you look at it, just the trauma itself from slavery on up to present date, which incarceration is a branch of. So when I look at brokenness in my life, I look at the lacking of things. I look at the lacking of having the male figure in my home.
hmm,
I didn't have that person I could go to for advice. The only thing I had to go to for advice was the homies that was on the streets that were a few years older than me.
yeah,
And I'm basing it on their experience and the things that they do.
yeah. So you have these homies in the streets, and they're the ones that you looked up to. The advice that they gave you was probably broken information, also.
It's remember, it goes down to interpretation. It's just like, how can you teach me something that you were never taught? You're going by what you did out of emotions.
Yeah, yep, exactly. But and you think about it, at 14, learning to sell drugs, it wasn't because you just picked it up and you had a gift for it. It was probably the people you were learning from, right?
Exactly. Those were my mentors, my teachers. The same things like when you go to school, you have a teacher in the front of the classroom, you have books. But out here on the streets, it's hands on. You watch. Look, homie, this is what you do. Okay, don't do this. Okay, look, when you see this person run, this is what the cops' cars look like. So it's the same thing as an educational system.
Hmm. Yeah, and that kind of education that you get, I mean, it's broken education. First of all, it's a bunch of people that look like you who are teaching you to be like them, and you're eating it up because there's nothing else to combat that from. You know, you and I are from the same hometown, so I kind of understand what that looks like, right?
And so
So go ahead.
you think it's right because that's all you know.
Hmm.
Those are the people that you grew up with. That's like your family. So you trust them.
Yeah. Yep.
And it becomes a part of your belief system as well.
Exactly. And that's the crazy part. It's like it becomes a part of you. It's all I know. That's all I see. You walk outside and it's what I see. It's the way it is. So you started selling drugs at 14. Um, did that just continue on, or did you just do it for a small period of time?
It continued on, and even when I came home from the military, I started again because of the simple fact It's like I'm coming from the military. There's really no jobs for me because the skills I acquired in the military were those for combat.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
you can't bring combat skills to the public. I found that out when I went to trial.
Today's episode is brought to you by Redemption and Advancement Alliance, whose mission is to provide innovative support to people to disrupt the cycles of incarceration and poverty. Go to www.redeem-advance.org to find out more information or make your $1,000, $100, $10, or even $1 donation to help support people who want to stay alive and free. That's it's funny, but it's not funny. It's the truth though. It's like you think about everything that you're learning about brokenness and what we're talking about. You stack brokenness on top of brokenness on top of brokenness until you finally broke. It seems like, you know.
It, it was it because you come out with all these ideas when you come out of the military. You come out with all these ideas like, yeah, okay. They said that I could go to college. They said I could do this. I got this coming. I got this. When you get out into the real world, you're fighting the VA for a lot of that stuff.
Mm. And if you don't know how to navigate the VA, it's like pushback, pushback.
And you get no's and no's and no's, regardless of your credentials or time served or anything.
Yeah,
And see, that's another part of the system that is broken. That to me, it's oppression in a sense because of the simple fact you've committed to the country to go do something. If you needed to go put your life on the line, they can call on you because you said this is what I'm going to do, and they're going to hold you to it.
right.
But they can renege on their deals.
Exactly. And but you know, your mindset at that time wasn't really how was your mindset? Let me ask you that question.
My mindset was, man, I get to go in here and I can go and be an officer. I can gain rank because remember, on the streets we have a pecking order.
Right.
We have the little homies, the OGs, the big homies. We have a pecking order. It's the same thing in the military.
Hmm.
So my mindset was, I can move up a step. So let me go do this school stuff. When I got out there, wait a minute, I need money. They're not helping me like they were when I was in there.
Right. Right. So now you're looking to go to college and so you can move up in your rank and your whole world's just flipped upside down at that point, right?
Because I don't have the income. So now I go back to what I know.
Right. It's all I know. I remember saying that a lot. It's all I know. So now you find yourself first time in front of a judge, first time arrested, and it's for a murder. And so, you know, what's going through your mind at that time? I know it's like this is an overwhelming situation, but what's going on in your mind at first off?
What was going on in my mind? Because I was fighting the death penalty.
Mm,
They were actually trying to give me the death penalty in the state of California. And I told my lawyer and I told the district attorney and I told the judge, I'm not going to die for anybody. And it was just something that came out when they first told me that because I didn't know anything else.
right,
All I know is I'm fighting for my life. And I couldn't put it into words that they could understand. I put it into words that I could say that I knew what I meant.
right.
I was scared as hell, but I'm telling them, look, I'm getting ready to fight for my life the way that you would fight for yours.
Yeah. I mean, you had no choice at that point. You know, they're offering you the death penalty or that's on the table. You got to fight. So,
There-
what sentence did you end up with?
I ended up with a sentence of 33 years to life.
Okay. All right. And so now you're in the you're fighting the system. You finally, you know, you win off the from getting the death penalty, but you get this 33 to life sentence. What's going through your mind as a young man at that time? Because you were still young at that time. How
I'm
old
like,
were you?
I hit Chino Reception Center at the age I turned, what? I had barely turned 21. In fact, I turned 21 at Chino because they lost me in the system.
Oh wow. Yeah. Struggles of the system. So you turned 21 in Chino. I mean, you're a kid basically in a grown man environment.
The crazy thing about it is that you don't know how you're supposed to act. The only thing, the animal instinct kicks in, and that's survival. I had a lot of the older dudes tell me, "Oh man, you a new lifer? They ain't letting none of us go. Call home and tell them to break the dinner plate. You'll never see the streets again."
Mm. The kind of information, again, broken information being passed on, right?
Exactly, because they had lost hope, because they had been there for such a period of time, and none of them were being released at the time because of the governors and all that. It was like they had this quote unquote tough on crime stance,
Right.
but it wasn't tough on crime; it was tough on us.
Yeah. So what year was this?
I hit Chino reception in 1990, May of 1990.
Wow, May of 1990. And so, you know, for me, I'm still in high school at that time, getting ready to finish high school, 1990. So it's an interesting dynamic of life. But here you are, 21, Chino, reception center, and yeah, back then it was really tough on crime. Everything was tough on crime, and this one, the whole system of incarceration was catching momentum, if you would. And so,
Mass buildings.
what was that?
They had the mass building of prisons.
Yeah, exactly. And so, when you start thinking about now, you're just starting your time. Tell us about, like, did you start getting involved with all the things of prison, or were you just kind of on your own?
What made me really start getting active in prison was because I was from Bakersfield and Chino is in Southern California, which is the LA area.
Right,
So they put me in an area that was predominantly Crips. I'm not a Crip.
right.
I'm from Bakersfield. So
Yeah.
I had some dudes from LA push up on me, asking me where you from and all that, and we got them up. So they took me and put me in an all blood area because they think now, okay, you got into it with the Crips, so we're gonna put you down here with the Bloods.
Yeah.
And that's where I started meeting dudes that were affiliated with JAMA and, UBN, all these different places, right?
Uh-huh.
It's like, man, look, come over here with it. I can't. I don't know your politics. I don't know nothing about what you represent. So they started teaching me and talking to me and stuff, right? So when I finally hit my first main line, which was Tehachapi Max, I saw some of my homeboys from Bakersfield. They said, "Nah, man, we don't do none of that. This is what we represent. We're 805. We don't participate in that because that's not what we're about." But they did tell me, "Look, if a person disrespects you, you get off on the spot.
Right.
You get off." So I started acting accordingly. You disrespect me, I'm getting off. Man, I had been beat with batons, pepper spray when they had the real pepper spray, when they wouldn't just have the stuff that takes your oxygen. They had this stuff and they had a tendency of trying to spray you in your eyes so they could beat you with the batons.
Yeah. And anyone that doesn't know about California prisons, it's not a it's not a place to go and just play. There's a seriousness about it. And so talk about some of the trauma that you experienced through the California Department of Corrections, other than the pepper spray and the baton beating and things like that. But what are some other traumas that you experienced?
Well, one thing you don't talk about a lot of the stuff you see. You can see somebody get killed on the yard. You don't talk about it. It's not talked about because of the simple fact you see nothing, you hear nothing. Your life is at stake.
Hmm?
I remember being in the dining room and the Southsiders, which are Southern Hispanics, put a move down on one of their people. And he was sitting at the table. They cut his throat and kept it moving. So when the police said get down, you get under the table because you don't want to get shot because the bullets ricochet. And the first time I heard that Mini 14 go off, that was like, they really killing us in here.
Yeah, and that's one. I mean, no one really signs up for that part of it. They don't really understand the depth of how wild it can be inside of a prison. And so, being able to experience that firsthand, that's traumatic. That's like you watch people, it's gladiator school. And then you have, the people with the guns. That's a different level. So, we could talk about this part of brokenness all the time and, talk about how prison was. And we can obviously see that, you found yourself in a place where, um, you were there. How much solitary confinement time did you ever have to do?
On which occasion?
Right. Well,
Total, I think if I rounded it off, I may have did, because you're not actually technically in the cell by yourself,
right.
except for the first, what they call the orientation time, like your first 10 days.
Hmm.
And then they'll give you a cellie. They try to match you up because they need the space,
Right.
because they bringing people in and out. I think my total time may have been like 6 years,
6 years.
if you calculated all of that.
What's interesting is I never talked to you about this. I never talked to you about, how much time you've done solitary confinement. But if you're in the California Department of Corrections for that amount of time, it's like a rite of passage in a sense of being in some solitary confinement or something like that. Because
Yeah.
that's how they handle things in there. It's not rehabilitation that they're trying to do. So, would
We
you
used to
say that
call it.
there's any rehabilitation in there?
We used to call it. It's called CDCR, right?
Uh huh.
We used to call it California Department of Restitution,
Mm.
because one, they're taking your money. They take 55% of your money that's sent in. If you
Wow.
owe restitution, they take 55%.
Mm. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you get 45%. If your family sends you $100, you get $45 out of that. They take 50% for restitution and 5% for administrative processing fees. They take 5% of that money for them doing their job to process the money to be put on your account.
Crazy. Crazy. Wow. So now you're going through all this madness. You have all this brokenness in your history. You have the broken system, the broken information, you know,
Broken
the
families.
broken families, everything. It's just kind of a mess, madness. When's the moment that you decided, you know what? What's your first step in healing? I got to heal from this mess. I got to start changing and transforming my life. This isn't the way I'm
Well,
going to live.
as sad as it is to say, my wake up call was in 2004 when I got the call my little brother was murdered.
Mm, wow.
And I couldn't be there. And that was somebody who I had basically raised. So I'm like, man, that's my little brother. I couldn't be there for him. Now he's gone. So now he's got kids. And then right after that happened, the closest thing that I had to a child, because I have no children, the closest thing that I had to a child, which was basically my daughter, her name was Carisha. She committed suicide because she suffered from postpartum depression. So I'm like, I'm losing everything that I love. I can't stay here. So I started taking little steps to make this change. I started doing little group things. I even went to the mental health department and asked them, look, are there groups that you have that deal with how to deal with people who suffer from grief from family member loss?
Hmm.
And the first dudes was talking shit and all that. Man, you over there in the mental health department, you trying to... Nah, man. Look at some shit I need to work on, man. Y'all know my little brother just got killed. So I started going through that. And started, really looking at, well, look, I looked at it in a sense because as I took a life, now something that I love was taken from me.
you know, that part of the helplessness, you're 14 years in at this point, or 15 years in at this point, and trying to find meaning in the sense that you can't even go, you're stuck, and that's the part about, I think a lot of times the part that sucks about prison is people, we do things that get us put in these places where we have no control over. And you find yourself longing for family, longing to be able to be with people, and something tragic happens, you have no control over it. You can't do nothing. You got to wait until they open that door. And so now you're 14, 15 years in, you're going through these classes. What difference did it make in your life as far as you overcoming the brokenness that you were feeling?
Well, at first it started making me look at, well, like I said, I looked at it as me taking a life and then something that I love being taken from me.
Hmm.
I started putting those two in play, and I'm starting to look at it like, man, if I feel this way, how did the person who I killed kids feel?
Right.
How did his family feel? And that was my first, what they call the aha moment. Well, wait a minute, look. Okay, so I realize this now. So what can I do to make a difference? So now I'm doing like Geronimo did when I first came to prison, because he used to tell me, man, stop fighting people and go in there and fight them law books to get up out of here.
Mm.
When I say Geronimo, that's you know who Geronimo is.
Geronimo Pratt.
Yeah, Jaga. So at first it didn't make sense to me. I'd go to the law library with him and sit in there and he'd be showing me how to use the law books and stuff. But it didn't really register. And when I started looking at after the events that I just described happened, I reflected back to that. And I'm saying this was part of what he was talking about.
Mm. You start reading, and that's, to me, one of the biggest transformations of my life came from reading, while I was in prison, just reading everything, reading as much as I can, understanding, learning, and challenging myself in all the information that I grew up learning. It was like I had all this broken information, and reading kind of challenged me on, I really didn't challenge myself to grow in everything else. So now you're in the law library. What else did you read?
Man, I read history books. I read James Baldwin. If Bill Street could talk, I read his version of Malcolm X. I was just reading to be reading. Read Behold a Pale Horse. Everybody that has been incarcerated pretty much knows what Behold a Pale Horse is. But I just started reading stuff. Not for the purpose of enjoyment, but to get an understanding. Because there were so many things that I didn't know, and reading those books opened up my world and just different perspectives and views. Things that I didn't know because the only thing I really knew was my community and what I was taught.
Right. That's good. So now you're going through this transformation, but you're still in the same location. You see the brokenness around you. How'd that influence you?
It was kind of crazy. I had a couple of scraps with dudes and stuff because they would talk shit. Oh, you think you better than us? And well, no, I'm not better than you. You can get on board or you can get out the way.
Right. Yeah. Interesting thing, better than you. You hear that all the time. You think you're better than me. You think you're better than me. Like, I literally had to tell people, I don't think I'm better than you. I'm just better than that. Better than what I used to do. Not better than nobody. I'm still a person. I still have my flaws and everything else. Just better than that. And that's where people need to, they begin to gravitate toward me because they understand we're better than this.
And see, you know what I think a lot of it is, and that after looking at it and really considering it and looking from within, right? The reason why a lot of people say you think you better than me is because of the low self-esteem. Because people have been put down so much. Everything that has been shown as far as the black man. We are not promoted into a position to where we're looked at as being capable of doing something. Even with, look, Bill Cosby was known as America's dad, and look what happened with him
Right.
behind closed doors. So we always have this stigma that's going to be put over our head that we don't even know anything about from the day that we're born.
Right.
We're started off with trauma just based on who we are.
Yeah.
And we're always, when you walk in a store, look, think about it. And this has been proven time and time again. When you walk in a store, even in your own neighborhood, what happens? Automatically, the proprietor looks at you.
Right.
So
Let
we,
me tell you something. I'm 50 years old now, and if I walk into a store and I walk out of that store with nothing, somehow in the back of my mind, I still think someone's watching me. Someone's. It's just that thing that's been there forever. And I did this yesterday. I went to a store and walked out with nothing. And thank you for joining us this week for the Disruptive Dialogue. Join us next week for the ending of this powerful story. Don't forget to like and share our page and hit that notification button so you know every time we post. Thank you and see you next week.